Still here. A story about the end of the world, 10 machetes, and the girl with the drone. Part 1. The video had been live for 8 minutes when my thumb stopped scrolling. No thumbnail, no caption, no trending sound, just shaky vertical footage from inside what looked like a hospital corridor. The kind of fluorescent lighting that makes everyone look half dead before anything has even happened. A man in a patient gown had a nurse pressed against a linoleum wall, and it took my brain a full 3 seconds to catch up to what my eyes were recording. Because the part of me that grew up on The Walking Dead kept insisting, this is a skit, this is a promotion, this is something produced by someone. It wasn't produced, it wasn't anything like that. He bit through her neck, clean and deliberate, like the concept of another person's pain had simply never occurred to him. And what I remember most wasn't the blood, though there was a lot of it, dark and arterial and wrong in the specific way blood is wrong when it's coming from somewhere it has no business coming from. But the room. 12 hospital staff trying to pull one man off one woman, and not one of them could do it. I could see the strain in their arms through a phone camera on the other side of a window. I could see the exact moment 2 of them stopped trying and just ran. My phone buzzed. Emergency alert. Wireless emergency alert. All residents are advised to remain indoors. Avoid public gatherings. Limit all non-essential travel. Prepare for extended shelter-in-place operations. Report unusual incidents to local authorities. Stay calm and await further updates. FEMA/Georgia EMAI, read it twice. Then I looked back at TikTok. The video was gone. The account was gone. I searched the keywords and got nothing, not even a shadow of it. The algorithm had eaten it in under 10 minutes, cleaner and faster than anything I'd ever seen content moderation do in my life. Which, if you think about it, is a kind of message all by itself. My chest was doing something I didn't have a name for. Not quite panic. More like the feeling you get on the highway when you realize you can't remember the last 4 exits and you've been driving on autopilot for God knows how long. And your body knew something was wrong before your brain agreed to acknowledge it. I was at my desk in my apartment. It was 11:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. I texted my mom, "You and Finn home right now, 30 seconds, yes." And thinking about running out to grab a few things though, Finn wants snacks, LOL. I called her before she could put the phone down. Mom. 3 years in sales had given me a very specific voice for important conversations. Level. Measured. The voice that closes the deal before the other person knows there's a deal being closed. What does Finn need? I'm already out. Text me his list. Oh, you're sweet. I could just meet you. It won't take me long. Mom, firmer this time. Stay home. Keep Finn inside. I'll get whatever he needs and I'll explain when I get back. A pause. My mom is not a woman who misses subtext. Colt, what's going on? Nothing yet, I said, which was honest. Just stay put. I'll be back by dinner. Then I called my dad. My dad, Dale Mercer. He is a 62-year-old contractor who operates 4 different neighborhood Facebook groups, watches cable news with the dedication of a competitive sport, and has a YouTube watch history that includes both 17-hour woodworking tutorials and a deep dive series on emergency preparedness that I'm now thinking he may have watched for reasons beyond curiosity. He picked up on the first ring. Colt, buddy. I was literally about to call you. Did you see that video that got taken down? From Mercy General in... I saw it, Dad. Son, I don't want to be the guy who says what I'm about to say. Then don't say it. It looked like... Dad. I was in my car already, engine on, scanning the parking lot out of habit. I need you to go to the storage unit, load the truck, the structural steel, the framing lumber, either the long lag bolts, the bolt cutters, both generators, the camp solar panels from the garage. The silence on his end was the productive kind. My dad processes logistically, not emotionally. It's the most useful trait a parent can have in a crisis, and I have never been more grateful for it than I was in that moment. Colt, he said slowly. Should I also grab the... Yes, everything useful. If you have to ask whether it's worth taking, it's worth taking. Rawlings owes me a favor. I can probably get structural steel at cost. Perfect. And Dad? I hesitated. Move fast. Already moving. A pause. You too, son. The drive should have taken me to Walmart. That's where your brain goes in an emergency. It's basically American survival reflex. And same as ducking when you hear a loud noise. But I turned off before the Walmart exit and kept driving east, toward the industrial strip on the other side of the river where 3 wholesale food distributors share a loading dock with a restaurant supply store and a salvage grocery that smells like cardboard and industrial cleaner and has no interest in your feelings about the decor. The parking lot there was half empty. The word hadn't spread yet. I had maybe 45 minutes. I worked like I had a timer running. 50-pound bags of rice, dried pasta in every shape they had because variety matters when you're going to be eating a lot of pasta. Lentils, black beans, pinto beans, kidney beans. Anything measured in years on the shelf, not weeks. Bulk cooking oil, salt, sugar, flour, baking powder, rolled oats, in instant powdered milk, canned goods in quantity, tomatoes, corn, tuna, sardines. I hate sardines, but desperation is a powerful reframe. Chicken breast, green beans, chickpeas. Protein powder because I am, at the end of the day, still a guy who thinks about protein even when the world is ending. The restaurant supply store next door was where I got the real score. A 40-gallon water storage barrel with a hand pump. Food-grade buckets with Gamma Seal lids full of bulk rice, and pure luck, a pallet of Gatorade powder in a dozen flavors. Finn was going to absolutely lose his mind about the Gatorade powder. I bought all of it. I watched the clock and hit 4 more stops. A sporting goods store where I bought 3 machetes and a tactical hatchet. The clerk gave me a look. I said I was going camping in bear country, which is at least directionally accurate. A hardware store for plywood sheets and masonry anchors and enough heavy lag bolts to reinforce a small bank vault. A Home Depot run for structural steel brackets, and a pharmacy where I split into 3 separate transactions so nothing flagged. First aid supplies, antiseptics, gauze, pain relievers, antihistamines, surgical tape, and every N95 mask on the shelf. By the time I loaded the last bag into my Tahoe, the back end was riding noticeably low. The parking lot at the wholesale place had gotten busier in the hour I'd been there. People were starting to figure it out. I drove home. My dad's F-150 was already in the lot, stacked with what looked like enough steel and lumber to frame a safe room, which, now that I was looking at it, was approximately what we were about to build. My dad was in the parking garage below our unit with a tape measure and a level, talking to himself in the focused way he does when he's in the middle of a project. My mom, Pam Mercer, was standing in the kitchen doorway with the expression of a woman who had decided to withhold judgment until she had more data, which, if you know my mom, meant she was already about 90% convinced we needed to take this seriously. My little brother Finn, 16 years old, 6'1" and constitutionally opposed to manual labor, was sitting on the truck tailgate playing something on his phone. "Colt," he said without looking up, "are we actually doing this?" "We're doing this." A pause. "Do I get to pick my weapon?" "We'll discuss it." "That's a yes." He put his phone away and stood up. "What do you need me to carry?" We worked until 2 in the morning. My dad boarded up windows with the methodical precision of a man who has renovated over 300 homes in 30 years and knows exactly how much structural integrity a piece of plywood can add when it's lag-bolted into the studs. He left 2 windows on each side slightly less reinforced than the rest. One for visibility, one for ventilation. and sealed every other one solid. The front and back doors got steel bar reinforcement from stock he uses on commercial job sites, the brackets sunk deep into the framing. Mom organized the dry goods into the converted spare room with a Tetris mastery that I can only attribute to pure maternal competence. She labeled everything, she made an inventory list, and she found a way to fit approximately 300 pounds of food into a room that previously held a treadmill and 2 boxes of holiday decorations. Finn, to his substantial credit, stopped asking questions and started carrying things. He made exactly one joke. So this is where we find out who was actually paying attention in AP Environmental Science, and then put his head down and worked. Before I slept, I sat on the couch and pulled up every news source I could access. The official line was measured and calm. Isolated incidents. Novel pathogen with atypical behavioral presentation. Contained situation under active monitoring. One mayor somewhere used the phrase "no cause for alarm," with the particular conviction of someone who has not watched the same TikTok I watched at 11:47 a.m. Two epidemiologists on cable news discussed the emerging situation with the confident smiles of people who had never seen 12 hospital staff unable to pull one man off a wall. I went to bed at 3 a.m. I'm not sure I slept. The next 4 days passed with enough normalcy that I almost let myself believe I'd overreacted. Almost. The FEMA alerts kept coming, measured and bureaucratic, urging calm and patience. Social media went quiet on anything specific, not just the videos, but the words themselves. Type "infected" in a post and it would disappear. Type "attacked" or "hospital incident" and you'd get a moderation notice. The algorithm wasn't just cleaning up videos anymore, it was doing something more comprehensive. My company sent an email on day 2. Given the current public health advisory, we are transitioning all staff to remote operations for the foreseeable future. We appreciate your flexibility. Translated: nobody knows what's happening. Please don't come in. My dad finished the window reinforcement on day 3 and spent day 4 reinforcing the door frames with steel brackets and building a quick-release bar system on the inside. The kind of thing that takes 5 seconds to secure from within but would take a determined person with a crowbar several minutes to defeat from outside. Finn discovered chess. He and my mom played for 4 hours on day 3 because the Wi-Fi was running slow and they needed something to do that didn't involve screens. I watched the parking lot. I watched it a lot. There was nothing to see in those first 4 days. People occasionally moving between buildings. One couple walking a dog around the perimeter of the complex, the usual rhythms. But there was a drone. I'd first noticed it on day 2. A mid-sized quadcopter making slow, methodical passes over the complex, lower than hobbyist drones usually fly, equipped with what looked like a small light array. It appeared at dawn and at dusk, flew systematic grid patterns, and vanished back toward Building C before anyone else seemed to notice it. On day 4, it made a slow, deliberate circle around our specific unit, hovered for about 6 seconds facing our reinforced windows, then left. I wasn't sure how I felt about that. Then on day 5, a message notification came in from an account I almost didn't recognize, Jarvis Keene. We'd been close through college and drifted the way people drift after graduation. Different cities, different rhythms, the kind of friendship that survives on memes and quarterly, "Hey man, you good?" texts. I hadn't talked to him in 2 months. He'd gone up to a different city for a concert and was supposed to be back before any of this started. His message was 4 words. I can't get home. His location pin put him squarely in one of the cities that had gone very, very quiet on the news lately. I tried to reply, "What's going on? What do you need?" and got an immediate flag. Content could not be sent. This message may violate community guidelines. I hadn't even said anything specific, just his name and "what do you need?" The algorithm was getting aggressive. I called him, connected, crackled, and then the background came through before his voice did. Multiple voices, high and distressed, and the specific pitch of people who are beyond scared and into something past it. Car horns, breaking glass, and then silence, then static, then the call dropped. I sat with that for a moment. Then I texted very carefully, typing around the trigger words, "Call me. Other number if needed." His response came slow, one character at a time, like someone very deliberately avoiding certain letters. "I am okay. In a good place right now. Things here are not good. Please don't try to reach me here. Stay where you are. Stay very quiet." Pause. Then, "Is your family safe?" "Yes. All 4 of us." "Good. Don't come for me. I mean that. Do not." I put the phone down, looked at the wall for a moment, and then I thought of something I hadn't thought of since the week before this all started. Jarvis's parents, Harold and Ruth Keene, 70s, you'd retired, living 20 minutes from us in the older part of town. The kind of people who got their news from the 6 o'clock broadcast and their shopping done on Saturday mornings. The kind of people who absolutely, categorically would not be prepared for this. I found my dad in the kitchen, told him what I was thinking. He read the texts, handed the phone back, and didn't say anything for a moment. "We go tonight," he said. "Supplies, quick check, back in 2 hours." I was going to say the same thing. We told my mom 15 minutes before we left. She was appropriately less than thrilled. She made us promise 4 separate times to be back within 2 hours, hugged me for a solid 30 seconds, and then looked at my dad with an expression that communicated something too specific for words. Finn handed me a walkie-talkie as I headed for the door. "I'll cover your position from the window," he said completely seriously. I looked at him. He was 16 years old and 6'1" and had spent the past week asking 0 questions and carrying every box I pointed at. "Thanks, man," I said, and meant it. I put a machete under the passenger seat. Dad had one under his. We loaded 2 duffel bags of supplies, 20 pounds of rice, canned goods, water jugs, and headed out. Part 2. The drive over was wrong in the specific way quiet is wrong when there should be noise. Most of the streets were empty. Not late night empty, not Sunday morning empty, just emptied like a location that's been cleared for filming. Traffic lights cycled through their colors for nobody. A gas station on the corner of 5th had a handwritten paper sign taped to the door. Closed. Please stay home. The word please was underlined twice. I kept my window rolled up. Harold and Ruth Keene lived in a brick bungalow on a shaded street in the kind of neighborhood where people still wave from their porches. The street was completely still. We knocked. A full minute passed. Then the door opened a crack, chain still on, and Ruth's eyes appeared in the gap. "Colt?" She exhaled the word more than said it. She let us in fast and threw the deadbolt behind us. The living room was curtains drawn and dim, the TV off, but the space was better stocked than I'd expected. Jarvis apparently had been shipping care packages home for months. Canned goods, bottled water, protein bars, supplements. He'd been paying attention even when he hadn't told me he was paying attention. We stayed 15 minutes. My dad checked their door reinforcement and added what he'd brought, a steel bracket kit and some lag bolts, while I sat with Ruth and Harold on their sectional and told them in the flattest and most reassuring voice I could produce that Jarvis was alive and smart and being careful. "He sent me a message this morning," I said. "He's hiding. He knows how to read a situation." Ruth had her hand over her mouth, but she nodded. Harold sat very straight, the way men of a certain generation sit when they're not going to let themselves fall apart in front of a guest. I took a photo of the 4 of us, me, Dad, Harold, Ruth, and saved it to send to Jarvis when the signal got better. I added their numbers to my contacts and told them to text if they needed anything, that we'd do what we could. "You're a good boy," Ruth said, holding my arm. "Your parents raised you right." We were saying goodbye at the door when we heard it. A scream from somewhere outside, female, short, and cut off in a way that sounds are cut off when the body making them stops. Not an argument, not a dog, not anything normal. That specific pitch. My dad had my arm before I'd processed the sound. "Truck, now!" I want to tell you we moved with tactical precision. We did not. We scrambled like two guys who understood exactly how serious this was and had absolutely no formal training for it. We were in the truck, engine running, in about 20 seconds. And we were pulling out of the driveway when something hit the passenger window with the full force of a human body. A woman. Mid-40s, one shoe off, housewife clothes with a dark stain spreading across the shoulder that wasn't the right color for sweat. She hit our window at a run and left a streak of blood, someone else's blood, across the glass, and then kept running without stopping, without looking at us, disappeared between two houses in the time it took me to process what I'd seen. Dad had already shifted into reverse. "Dale," I said. My voice had gone flat, which happens to me in high-stress situations. Sales training did that to me. "I know," he said. I know what it was, Colt." We cleared the neighborhood in 3 minutes. I held the machete in my lap and watched the mirrors and said nothing, because there was nothing useful to say. We were 2 blocks from the highway on-ramp when a sedan came through the intersection on the wrong side of the road at about 40 miles an hour and took out a traffic light pole on the opposite corner. Not cinematic, just the crunch of metal, the pole tilting, the car coming to rest against a concrete median with its airbags deployed and something moving in the back seat. Something moving in a way that backseat passengers are not supposed to move. We both knew what was moving. Dad slowed. "Don't," I started. Something hit my window. A man, maybe 35, blood running from a gash above his left eye, standing beside the passenger door. Both hands on the glass. His eyes were the wrong color, not bloodshot, not allergic, but red in the specific way that nothing in my life experience had prepared me to identify. "He'd open the door." He hit the glass again. "Please, please, they're everywhere, please." His voice cracked from desperate into something uglier, something that had decided desperation wasn't working. "I will put your truck through a building if you don't open this door. I swear to God, open it, open it." He grabbed the door handle, pulled. I felt the door flex. Dad hit the gas. The man didn't let go. I watched through the window as his shoes left twin lines on the asphalt and he was still screaming. Both hands locked to my door handle with a strength that had nothing natural left in it. And I could see his face through the glass, the way his eyes were going from desperate to absent in real time. Not anger, not even fear anymore. Something behind those eyes was leaving, and what was staying was just the grip. I made a decision that I don't think I thought through. I rolled the window down 4 inches, grabbed the machete, and brought the flat of the blade down on his fingers. Sharp, clean, once. He let go. The truck lurched. I rolled the window up before my brain finished processing what I'd done. I got one last look at him in the mirror. Sitting in the middle of the road, staring at his hands with the confused expression of someone who couldn't quite remember where they were. And then Dad took a corner and he was gone from view. I sat with the machete across my lap and stared at the smear on the blade and tried to get my heart rate below 200. I had played 1 semester of college lacrosse. That was the entirety of my history with physical violence, outside, and the city moved past the windows with a texture it hadn't had an hour ago. Lights in windows, shapes behind curtains, the occasional sound I identified and then immediately chose not to think about. "You okay?" Dad asked, not taking his eyes off the road. "Give me a second." "You've got as many as I can give you. Tell me which way." "North. Get to 285. We go home." He drove. I cleaned the blade with the first aid wipes from the glove box and checked my hands for anything that shouldn't be there. Clean. We were clean. I tried to slow my breathing down to something a normal person would do. We were 2 blocks from our complex when the drone appeared, and it dropped from the early evening sky like it had been waiting precisely for us. A quadcopter with a flashlight attached and what looked like a handwritten note duct taped to the landing skid. Dad slowed. The drone hovered directly in front of our headlights, deliberate as a stop sign, and dipped low enough for me to read the note through the windshield. Don't come in yet. Single infected near Unit 7 between parking structure and mailboxes. I'll draw her off. Call this number when ready, 404-A phone number. That was it. My dad looked at me. I looked at him. That's been watching us, he said. I know. I thought about the quadcopter I'd seen circling our unit on day 4. I think it's been watching us for a while. Is that good or bad? I thought about it. If it wanted to do us harm, and it had better opportunities than this. Dad nodded. Call. It rang once. A voice answered. Female, young, the specific calm of someone who does not panic under pressure, which is a thing you can hear in the first syllable. You two okay? We're okay. Rough drive. Your note says there's someone near Unit 7. Single infected female. She's been doing loops between the mailboxes and the stairwell for about 20 minutes. I have a speaker on the drone. Give me 4 minutes and I'll draw her north. When I text you, come in fast, go straight to your unit, don't stop. Who are you? I asked. A pause. Someone in Building C who has been watching your unit for a few days because you're the only ground floor that actually appears prepared. But I thought there might be something to offer each other. You thought right, my dad said. He'd put the phone on speaker without my noticing. Stand by. 4 minutes. Exactly 4 minutes later, from the far end of the complex, we heard it. Faint at first, then louder. A speaker playing Happy Birthday to You on a continuous loop from approximately the height of a flying drone. Not loud, just insistent. Just that one specific frequency that cuts through almost everything else. The infected woman turned toward it immediately, the way they always turn toward sound, and walked in its direction with the determined focus of someone who has found what they were looking for. My phone buzzed. Go. Dad drove in. We parked in under 30 seconds. We crossed the lot in under 20. I knocked on our door and said, it's us. I don't open armed, which felt entirely necessary to specify. And Mom had the door open before I finished the sentence, and she had her arms around me before I finished stepping inside. Finn had the security bar reset before the door latched, while Mom ran her hands over my arms looking for scratches. She found one piece of road rash on my elbow from hitting the door frame, treated it with a medical thoroughness that was clearly serving a dual purpose. I navigated to my contacts and sent a friend request to the phone number from the drone note, accepted inside 5 seconds. The username was simply Sloan. I typed, thank you, that was impressive. Pause. Then, you two are impressive. I've been watching your prep operation. Your dad's structural work is exceptional. He's a contractor. It's basically his love language. Another pause. I could feel the smile on the other end of that. I'm on the 3rd floor of Building C. If you ever need anything scouted, I have eyes. And if you need anything else, just say so. Same goes for us, I typed back. You need anything, you know where we are. I put the phone down and let my mom finish her inspection, and I thought about the voice on the other end of that call. Calm and precise and completely unshaken. And I thought, whoever that is, she's going to be important. I wasn't wrong. Part 3. On the 9th night, I fell asleep on the couch at midnight. This was not part of the watch rotation. I had nodded off sitting up, which doesn't happen to me under normal circumstances, but the past week had not been normal circumstances. It and my body had apparently decided to collect on its debt without giving me a vote. I paid for it. In the dream, I was at the door, our door, the reinforced, steel-bracketed, thoroughly barricaded door, looking through the peephole. The man from the road was on the other side, the one whose hands I'd hit with the machete. He was standing in the hallway, completely still, facing the door, and he was smiling in the way that faces smile when the person controlling them is no longer in the building. Then he knocked. Once. Polite almost. Conversational. The door gave. It didn't explode or splinter. It simply opened, slow and inevitable, the way something gives when it was never going to hold regardless. I tried to move and my legs had filed for independence. Standard nightmare physics. And the man walked through the threshold with the unhurried confidence of someone who has all the time there is. And I kept thinking I should be doing something. I know how to do something. And then he was right in front of me, and his face... Colt. Finn's hand on my shoulder, steady and persistent. I came up out of the dream hard, heart slamming, and for one bad second I genuinely couldn't locate myself in space. Then the room resolved. Our living room, the small plug-in nightlight in the corner. Finn crouched at eye level beside the couch, watching me with the careful expression of someone who has seen this before and knows the right amount of space to give. "Hey," he said. "You with me?" I was soaked through my shirt. I nodded. "You were shaking for like 5 minutes, and then you tried to stand up." "I'm good." I got myself upright and went to the door on autopilot, looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty, obvious, intact. I'd known it would be. I looked anyway. "The ones outside are doing the cluster thing again," Finn said, appearing at my shoulder. He was holding a bottle of water and wearing an expression of studied casualness that didn't quite cover the fact that he'd been keeping watch solo for several hours, and had probably not been as blasé about it as he was pretending. Through the south-facing window, a loose gathering of 15 or 20 infected in the small park area, standing in a shifting cluster, barely moving, like something in them had gotten tired. "They've done this 3 times tonight," Finn said. "Always around the same time. We always break up after about 10 minutes. You've been watching for hours. I mean," he shrugged, "there's not that much to watch. I've been counting. The average cluster is between 12 and 18 individuals. Disperse time is 9 to 13 minutes. I looked at my 16-year-old brother. "When this is over," I said, "I'm telling everyone you were the most useful person in this apartment." He pointed at the water bottle until I took it. "Go back to sleep." After a bit, he went to his room eventually, and I sat in the dark and sent a text to Sloan, who was apparently also up. Observation: significantly slower after midnight. Maybe 60% of daytime movement speed. Her reply was immediate. Confirmed. I've been timing them with the drone stopwatch function for 6 days. Nocturnal movement is consistently impaired. I think ambient temperature is a factor. The hotter the day, the more aggressive the daytime behavior. Like reptiles, I typed. Exactly like reptiles. Do not tell them that, they'll be insufferable about it. I laughed. Quiet, just air through the nose, nothing that carried, and felt more human than I had since the road. "How are you doing over there?" I asked. Honestly? Running low on everything. The government drops are okay, but they're not regular enough." A pause. "How are you?" "Had a rough dream. Better now." She didn't push on it, didn't offer advice or ask follow-up questions, just try to rest. "We're going to need sharp eyes in the morning." I appreciated that more than I could have explained in a text. The days found a rhythm, and not a comfortable one, more like the rhythm of a long drive on an unfamiliar road where you're making decent time but you can't stop being careful about it. Watch rotation, meal planning from inventory, window checks every 2 hours. Sloan and I texted morning and evening with reconnaissance reports, where the clusters were forming, how many had drifted into the complex from outside, which exits were clear. She was precise and unsentimental in her observations, the kind of person who can look at a bad situation and describe it accurately without adding drama to it. I found this genuinely valuable. She mentioned, offhandedly, in a week 2 text, that she was almost out of food, that she'd been living on government supply drops since day 3, that the drops were sporadic, that she'd been stretching things. She's alone over there, my mom said, reading over my shoulder with the subtlety of someone who is not operating under the impression that I'm capable of handling this myself. Mom, she helped you and your father come home. I know. One person, that building with a drone. I know, Mom. My mom said nothing further and somehow still won the argument. When I went back to my phone, she had already left the kitchen. The next day, I texted Sloan. Can I ask you something? Sure. My dad has a drone he uses for construction site surveys. If I flew it over, could you use it to put a bag on it? Like a grocery bag? Pause. Yes. That would actually work. Then consider yourself invited to dinner, every night if you want. A longer pause, then, I don't want to impose on your family's supplies. You are not imposing. You are the reason my family's supplies made it back to this building. Please let us feed you. She sent a thumbs-up emoji which felt very like her. Practical, minimal, slightly warmer than it looked. For 2 weeks, we sent the drone back and forth at dinner time. My mom would pack a container, rice and beans, mashed potato soup from the powder mix, once a legitimately good stew she'd made from canned tomatoes and the dried mushrooms she'd panic bought on day 1, and fly it over to Building C where Sloan would retrieve it from her window and send back the empty container. My mom started making extra, then more extra. Then she started including dessert. I'm not sending a stranger Oreos in a drone delivery, I said one evening. She's not a stranger, my mom said, wrapping 3 Oreos in a paper towel and placing them very deliberately on top of the container. She's Sloan. I did not have a response to this. Part 4. The horde arrived on a Thursday. We'd had about a dozen infected drifting through the complex by then. Regular fixtures, if you could call them that, wandering their usual routes. We knew most of them by sight. Finn had given 2 of them nicknames, which I'm going to leave at that. Then Thursday morning I woke up to a sound like a crowded shopping mall coming from directly outside, which is a sound that has no good explanation in the middle of an apocalypse. I looked out the south window. Oh, I said. That was the entirety of my response. The complex was full, not a dozen infected, 100, more than 100, coming from the south end, in drifting north, filling the parking areas in the greenway and the path along the creek like water filling a bowl. A migration, slow and directionless and enormous. A government alert buzzed through within the hour. Do not be alarmed by increased movement of infected individuals in your area. This is part of an authorized management operation. Infected populations are being redirected to a containment zone north of the metro area. Movement will continue for 24 to 72 hours. Remain indoors. Await further updates. Translation: they were herding them north, toward the mountains presumably, away from where the people were. Sound logic, not comforting from inside the fishbowl. I texted Sloan, "Are you seeing this? I have been watching it since 6 a.m. A pause. Colt, I don't have much food left. I stared at my phone. Hey, we couldn't fly the drone in this. There were too many of them and sound drew them the way moths go for light, and a drone motor was enough sound. Sloan. I typed it out and then sat with it for a moment. Then, do you want to come here? We have room and we have food, and honestly, my mom has been talking about you like she already knows you, and I think she'd be happier if you were here. The response took long enough that I thought I'd read the situation wrong. I would really like that, but I can't ask you to risk coming for me. I wouldn't come for you. I can't. There are too many between here and Building C. You'd have to get here on your own. I paused. Can you? An even longer pause. I've been mapping their cluster patterns for the past 3 days. I stared at that message. You've been planning this for 3 days? I wasn't sure you'd offer. My family was gathered around my shoulders at this point, which I had stopped noticing. My mom gave me a single nod. Not encouraging, just confirming that the decision I was already making was the right one. Dad was visually calculating route window. Finn was aggressively pretending he wasn't listening. I called her. She picked up on the first ring. Hey, I said. Hey. Still calm. Always that same specific calm. Okay, practical stuff. You want to move at night. They slow down significantly after midnight. You've seen the data. Layer up, cover everything. Neck, forearms, wrists. Boots over your pants, not tucked under. Even if you have anything rigid, you can strap to your forearms. I have a thick photo book I was going to use as a prop for something. 2 of them, actually. Perfect. Strap them around your forearms, neck and shoulders, a scarf, anything. If you have a helmet. I have a motorcycle helmet. I drove here, remember? Put it on, and bring a weapon. You have anything? Hiking axe, and a very heavy carbon fiber tripod I have been seriously reconsidering the use case for. Take both. I paused. One more thing. When you get here, and I'm saying when, we're going to need to check you for bites or scratches before you come fully inside. My dad will do it. We just need to be sure. Silence on her end, long enough that I started trying to figure out how to rephrase. I understand, she said. It's the right call. I'd do the same. Good. When you're ready, call me. I'll stay on the line. Okay. Another pause, and then very quietly. Thank you, Colt. She didn't come that night. The horde was too active, and she sent a text at 11 p.m. that said, not tonight, tomorrow. I have a plan, and I honestly cannot tell if it's genius or embarrassing. It turned out to be both. She'd found a remote-controlled toy SUV in the storage closet of a vacated unit, left behind by someone who'd packed and run, and duct-taped a Bluetooth speaker to it. She drove it ahead of her through the parking lot in slow figure eights, playing a continuous loop of Happy Birthday to You at medium volume. The infected followed it like it was delivering something they'd been promised. I know this because she kept the phone line open the whole way, and I stood at our window in the dark with my dad beside me and my mom's hand on the door and Finn pressed to the glass watching. There was a shape in dark clothing moving between parked cars in the wake of an absurd toy SUV playing birthday music, and every infected in the immediate vicinity was facing entirely the wrong direction. 3 quiet knocks at our door. I had it open in 2 seconds. Dad pulled her in. I had it sealed again before either of them had said a word. She stood in our entryway and straightened up, and I got my first real look at her. Motorcycle helmet still on, neck gaiter pulled up over her nose, 3 outer layers of clothing over a leather jacket making her silhouette about twice her actual width, hiking axe at her hip and a collapsed tripod in one hand. The drone bag strapped to her back, and she pulled the neck gaiter down and lifted the visor of the helmet. I want to say I handled it with sophistication. You made it, I said. Absolutely nailed it. Happy birthday to me, she said and laughed, short and slightly shaky, the specific laugh that happens when adrenaline has nowhere left to go. And my dad laughed too, and that was the sound that broke the tension, that specific kind of laughter that means everyone in the room is still alive and knows it. My mom stepped forward. Honey, we need to check you over first. Come with me. Sloan nodded. I know. Show me where. I was going to let my dad handle it, because he should, because it was appropriate. But I found myself hovering near the hallway anyway, which my mom noticed with a single look that conveyed more than I was comfortable with. My dad and Sloan went to the bathroom. The door closed. I leaned against the hallway wall and stared at a point somewhere in the middle distance for approximately 90 seconds, which is a long time to stare at nothing. Dad came out first. "Clean," he said. "No marks anywhere." I let out a breath that had been waiting since the moment she knocked. Sloan came out a minute later. She'd shed the outer layers, pulled the neck gaiter down around her throat, taken the motorcycle helmet off. She was in a flannel shirt and jeans, hair pulled back, and she looked exactly like herself, which I realize sounds obvious except that I'd built up some version of her from 2 weeks of texts and one voice call. And looking at her in person was different from that in a way I wasn't quite prepared for. She looked up and found me already looking at her, which was not my best moment. We both registered it. She looked away first, one corner of her mouth pulling up. "Sit down," my mom said, appearing from nowhere and steering Sloan firmly toward the couch. "You are eating something. I don't want a single word of argument." You are in my home," my mom said pleasantly, "which means I decide what fine looks like. Sit." Sloan sat. Finn materialized from the back hallway, took one look at her, extended his hand with the gravity of someone opening a board meeting. "I'm Finn. You helped my dad and my brother get home. Our family would not have made it through the early days without your strategic support." Sloan blinked, shook his hand. "That's very direct. I've been told it's my defining quality. You want some chips? These are the last real chips we have, and I feel like you've earned them." She took the chips. My dad, who had been watching this whole sequence with the expression of a man who knows his house just got a lot less lonely, said nothing at all, but he caught my eye and gave me one small nod. The specific nod that means we did the right thing. Yeah, we did. 3 days later, the parking garage door incident happened. We'd been in a tense equilibrium. The horde in the complex was still dense, but they were moving generally northward, thinning day by day as the government herding operation continued. The southern end of our building was manageable. Our watch rotation had become a 5-person operation now that Sloan was with us, which meant everyone was getting slightly more sleep, which meant everyone was slightly less likely to make a catastrophic error of judgment. Then one of the infected walked directly into the parking garage roll-up door below our unit. Not aggressively. It just drifted into it the way a person walks into a sliding glass door they didn't see. The collision made the steel door resonate, a deep metallic thunk that traveled up through the walls and made our windows rattle. The sound drew more of them. Within 4 minutes, 8 infected were pressing against the garage door. Within 7, it was 12. The door was industrial grade, and I genuinely believed it would hold, but I was also running the math on what happened after it held and they started climbing, and the number I arrived at was not much time. "We need to draw them off," Sloan said. She was at the window beside me, watching. "My drone is down. I lost a rotor 2 days ago. We don't have anything with a speaker system. Could we, I don't know, throw something into the creek?" I thought about it, maybe. If we could open a window without making more noise than whatever we threw. Thunk. From above. Clear and deliberate, coming through the ceiling. Someone upstairs had thrown something out their window into the creek. A wine bottle from the sound of it. The infected near the garage turned toward the water. Some of them, not enough. Thunk, thunk, thunk. More things from above, books, bottles. Anything heavy enough to make impact noise on water. From the unit directly above ours, someone was lobbing objects with serious accuracy. I watched infected turn toward the creek one by one. The pressure on the garage door was easing, to still not enough. Then, sailing from the window 3 floors up, tumbling in a slow arc, landing in the branches of the large tree by the creek's edge with an audible thwop and hanging there, swaying in the Spanish moss. A stuffed animal, a large stuffed bear from the size of it, with what appeared to be a phone duct taped to its back. A second of silence. Then from that bear filtering through the evening air with the pure absurdist force of something nobody could have planned. I like to move it, move it. I like to move it, move it. I like to move it. Madagascar. The penguin song from Madagascar. Playing on a stuffed bear hanging in a tree. Every infected in the immediate vicinity turned toward it simultaneously, with the collective focus of people who have never done anything more important in their lives. And the parking garage was empty in 40 seconds. Sloan put both hands over her mouth. My dad sat back on his heels and said, "Outstanding." Finn made a sound I can only describe as a reverential wheeze. "I will hand-deliver that person a full edible arrangements basket," my dad said. "The moment the world is functional enough for edible arrangements to operate, I will drive it there myself." The phone played for 22 minutes before it either ran out of battery or fell from the branch. By then, the infected had distributed themselves far enough that our building had breathing room again. Sloan sat down on the floor against the wall, and I sat down next to her, and neither of us said anything for a moment. The adrenaline was doing its thing, cycling down into exhausted relief. Her shoulder was against mine, and neither of us moved away from it. "Madagascar," she said finally. "Madagascar," I confirmed. "You know what's impressive about that? Whoever's up there had to have planned that. The duct tape, the throw angle, all of it. Your happy birthday drone was also planned. That was 3 days of planning. So was that. We're surrounded by prepared people." She turned her head to look at me, and her expression was something I didn't quite have language for. Not quite a smile, not quite something more than that. "We really are," she said. "I keep being surprised by that." "Don't be," I said. "Good people are the default." She held my gaze for a second, then looked back at the window. "I hope you're right about that." "I usually am in my experience," she laughed, quiet, genuine, and the first real full laugh I'd heard from her, and bumped my shoulder with hers. And humble. Famously. Part 5. The helicopters came on a Sunday morning and changed everything. Not the supply drop helicopters. These were different. A formation coming in from the south in coordinated lines, flying lower than I'd seen any aircraft fly in my life while doing something that wasn't landing. They swept in over the complex roof like something from a movie sequence, and every infected in every direction turned upward at the sound. What happened next was one of the stranger things I've witnessed, and I have witnessed some things recently. The helicopters slowed down, opened their side doors, and began dangling bags, actual bags hung on cables below the aircraft, and containing something red and visceral that I did not look at too closely, and turned north. Slowly, steadily, staying just ahead of where the infected could reach, keeping the pull constant. The horde followed, not all of them, not instantly, but the direction of movement shifted wave by wave away from the residential buildings and toward the north end of the complex where the fence had been opened sometime in the night. Hundreds of them, redirected by sound and smell and the simple biological reality that whatever was in those bags was more compelling than anything else in their immediate environment. "They're moving them to the valley system north of the Piedmont," Sloan said, phone in hand, pulling up topographical data. "There's a natural containment basin up there, surrounded on 3 sides by ridgeline. Even if they can concentrate the population in the basin, then they have options," my dad said. None of us asked which options. Some things you don't need to specify. We watched for most of the afternoon, the complex emptied by degrees. The south end, which had been the most heavily populated, cleared to single digits by 4 p.m. By sunset, the only infected still visible were the ones who'd gotten turned around somehow, confused by the creek, walking in circles around the parking structure, doing their slow geographic problem-solving in the wrong direction. Then the other helicopters came, smaller, more purposeful. They hovered without landing, and from their sides repelled figures in matte black tactical gear, moving with the specific efficiency of people who have done exactly this kind of work before and are good at it. And they descended in 4-person teams and worked their way through the complex in a grid pattern, quiet and methodical, dealing with the remaining infected with a minimum of noise and a maximum of finality. I watched through the window for 4 hours. I don't think I blinked more than about 40 times. When the last team finished the parking lot sweep and gave a thumbs up to the helicopter above, a sound started from somewhere in the building. Quiet at first, impossible to identify. And then I realized it was someone a few floors up crying. Not in grief, in relief. The specific sound of someone who has been holding themselves together for a very long time and has just found out that they can stop. My mom was crying too, quietly into my dad's shoulder. Finn had gone very still, and in the way that people go still when they're processing something larger than the normal containers can hold. My dad had his arm around him. Sloan stood at the window beside me, and I don't know what her face looked like because I was looking at the same thing she was looking at, and that was enough. Just standing next to someone who understands what you're watching. "Okay," she said quietly after a long moment. "Yeah," I said. "Okay." The weeks that followed were slow and cautious and mostly good. The water stayed on. Power flickered twice and recovered. The FEMA alerts shifted from urgent to administrative. Decontamination schedules, debris removal timelines, guidance on when essential businesses might reopen. The bureaucratic language of things getting better. The National Guard unit spent 3 days clearing the parking structure and surrounding Greenway, working from a list and checking boxes, and they came door to door with the careful courtesy of people who had been briefed on how to talk to civilians who had been through something. The soldier who knocked on our door was maybe 22, wore her hair in a tight bun under her helmet, and asked if we needed medical attention or supplies with the same tone other people use to ask if you want sugar in your coffee. Matter of fact, professional. I found it deeply reassuring. Sloan moved her equipment over from Building C with an escort she hadn't had to ask for. The same young soldier came back the second day and offered. The spare room became hers officially. She set up her drone repair station on the small desk by the window and kept odd hours recalibrating equipment, which my dad treated as a completely normal thing to have in the house because in the new normal it was. She could cook. We hadn't known this. She hadn't known this. The discovery happened gradually, beginning with her watching my mom and gradually taking over sections of the process, and finally one evening producing a roasted chicken that was better than my mom's roasted chicken, which my mom acknowledged with the generous spirit of someone who has decided to be glad about the outcome rather than competitive about it. "How did you not know you could do this?" Finn asked. "I had a whole app system," Sloan said. "I ordered dinner every night. I had it optimized. And now the optimization is gone. And now I can apparently roast a chicken. Silver linings. Enormous silver linings." My mom found approximately 37 opportunities per month to engineer situations where Sloan and I would be in the same room alone. These were not subtle. They included asking us both to check something in the storage unit at the same time, assigning us both the task of reviewing the south window seal for structural integrity. And once, legendarily, claiming the television remote had stopped working and expressing specific confidence that Sloan and I were the only 2 people in the household with the technical aptitude to fix it. Sloan noticed, and she had this way of not smiling when she was trying not to smile. A very specific controlled expression that I had become over the preceding months entirely too familiar with. "Your mom is not subtle," she told me once when we were both on the roof of the parking structure. She was recalibrating a rotor mount. I was passing her tools and pretending this was a thing I could help with. Never has been. It's kind of wonderful. She'll deny it if confronted. That's also kind of wonderful. She tightened something. For the record, I don't mind. I had a response to that. I'm fairly confident it was a good one. I lost it somewhere in the space between forming it and saying it, because she looked up from what she was doing and she was looking directly at me, and there was something in her expression that was past the controlled not smile. Something that had gotten through before she could redirect it. For the record, I managed, neither do I. She went back to the rotor mount. I passed her the next tool she asked for. My mom texted me 3 more times while we were up there. I didn't read them until we were back inside. On Christmas Eve, my mom made real mashed potatoes from actual potatoes, which Sloan had acquired from God knows where and presented to her like a hostage negotiator handing over a briefcase. There was a chicken, Sloan's method, which had fully replaced my mom's in the family recipe rotation, and green beans from a can that somehow tasted like the best green beans I'd eaten in my life, even cornbread from a box mix that came out better than it had any right to. We ate at the actual table with actual plates, the 4 of us plus Sloan, with candles because the overhead light had been flickering and we'd decided to lean into it. I want to say something, my dad said, which is how my dad opened speeches. My mom looked at him. This has been the worst and the best year of my life, and I want to say it out loud, at a table with everyone here who made it the best part. We made it. All of us, and I'm grateful. He raised his water glass. We raised ours. Finn said, to surviving, and my mom said, to family. And Sloan said, quiet but clear, to everyone at this table. I looked around the table and I thought, every person I love most in the world is in this room. And then I thought, almost simultaneously, when that number is larger than it was 6 months ago. After dinner, the upstairs neighbor knocked, Marcus Webb, 3rd floor, the man with the Madagascar phone and the world-class throwing arm, and he'd brought the 2 kids with him and their grandmother, and they came to say thank you and ended up staying for 2 hours, playing Uno on the living room floor while the kids destroyed all of us methodically and without remorse. Those kids are going to be running something someday, Sloan said, watching Finn lose his 4th consecutive hand to a 9-year-old. Terrifying thought, I agreed. The best kind of terrifying. It was June 1st, technically Children's Day in other countries, and therefore, as Finn argued at breakfast with complete conviction, an excellent reason for all of us to act like children and eat the good snacks. He was not wrong. Isolation was officially lifted. Things were functionally normal, whatever that word meant now. My company had me back 3 days a week. Dad had a renovation project starting in 2 months. Finn had done so many online classes during the extended school closure that his guidance counselor had told him, with an expression of mild disorientation, that he was ahead. We'd heard from Jarvis, not from his city. He'd eventually been evacuated to a secure zone and was safe, and his parents had gotten a government call confirming it the month before. He'd sent one long message and then promised to call when service was stable. I'd showed his parents, and Ruth had cried, and Harold had sat very straight and not cried, in which was its own kind of the same thing. Dinner that evening was elaborate. Sloan roasted another chicken. My mom made the cornbread. I handled cleanup, which I announced before she could volunteer, and which I did alone with the kitchen door mostly closed. Then I turned out the light and came out of the kitchen with what I had, paper flowers. 6 of them folded from the backs of old supply inventory lists, painted with a blue ballpoint pen. Approximate blue, approximate green, approximate nothing like a real flower. I'd wrapped a strand of surplus Christmas lights around the stems, which weren't lit because we were still managing the electric bill, but which had a kind of structural commitment to them. They were objectively not good flowers. Finn made a suppressed wheeze from the couch. Sloan looked at the flowers, then at me, then at the flowers again. Those are made of paper, she said. They are. Did you? I made them. Over several evenings. There's a YouTube tutorial if you think that makes this look easy, which it does not. She hadn't moved. The paper flowers sat in my extended hand between us. Sloan. My heart was doing something I'd have to describe to a cardiologist as technically a rhythm. I know this is not the world's greatest setup. I know the timing has been objectively insane from day one. I know that these flowers are a genuine insult to the craft of origami. But I have spent the past 6 months learning that you are the person I want to have around when everything is going wrong and when it's going right, even in the long middle part where it's mostly just waiting to find out which it is. And I waited too long to say it out loud, and I'm saying it now. I paused. Go out with me. She looked at me for a long moment. The almost smile was doing something different now. Something that was letting itself be more than almost. I love them, she said. They're terrible. I love them, she said again. And she took them. Is that a yes? Colt, obviously it's a yes. She stepped forward and kissed me on the cheek, quick and warm and completely deliberate. It's been a yes for a while. From the couch. Finally. Finn's voice with the full force of someone who has been waiting for this specific outcome since roughly November. My mom laughed, the specific laugh of someone proven right, and leaned into my dad, who looked at the ceiling and then at me and just nodded once, the nod that means good. I stood in our living room, our fortress, our shelter, our home, with paper flowers in Sloan's hand and my family making noise all around me, and I thought, this is what it costs, and this is what you get, and it is so far past worth it I can't find the bottom of it. Outside, the city was slowly becoming itself again. The creek was clearing. The parking lot had been pressure washed and relined. Down the block, the first business had reopened, a gas station, then a pharmacy, then a coffee shop. And the coffee shop had a line out the door every morning of people who had genuinely forgotten what it felt like to want something small and ordinary. We were still here, all of us. Everything was going to be okay. Good. In an epilogue. Sloan. I recognized him before he recognized me, which is not as impressive as it sounds. He has the same jaw he had at 13, and I have a very good memory for anyone who was kind to me in the specific way that lands. His family had lived in this complex first. When mine moved in, I was 9, new school, didn't know anyone, in possession of the particularly miserable self-consciousness of a third grader who has been pulled out of a situation she understood into one she doesn't. The Mercers were the first people to say anything. His dad, Dale, helped my father carry boxes off the truck without being asked. His mom, Pam, brought a casserole on day 2. And Colt, who was 13 and therefore at the height of being too cool to acknowledge the existence of younger children, said exactly 3 words to me on our first encounter. I was sitting on the curb reading A Wrinkle in Time, which I'd read twice but was reading again because everything else was in boxes. He walked past, glanced down, stopped. You like that? He spent the next 20 minutes telling me about the sequel, which he'd apparently read twice himself, with the focused enthusiasm of someone who cannot understand why you wouldn't want to know everything about this. He sat down on the curb beside me without asking, and he talked with his hands, and when his mom called him in for dinner, he said, "I'll bring you the sequel tomorrow." And then did in fact bring it the next day, tucked under his arm like a completely normal thing to do for a kid he'd met once. I'd forgotten the book. I never forgot the way it felt to have someone sit down. My family moved away the following year. I was 10. Colt was 14 and probably didn't register the absence. Kids come and go. I came back here as an adult on a photography contract that was supposed to last 3 months and ended up outlasting the world as I knew it. I moved into Building C, set up my equipment, did my job, ate dinner from the same 4 apps every night in rotation, and operated under the impression that I was perfectly self-sufficient, which I mostly was, and which mostly satisfied me, which I told myself was enough. Then the alerts started. Then the TikTok video that got deleted so fast you'd almost think nobody had seen it. Then the first infected individual I saw in person from my third-floor window, he walking in circles in the parking lot below with a gait that was wrong in every possible way. I had the drone for work. I started flying it for information. I mapped the patterns, counted the clusters, tracked the migration, because information is the thing I know how to gather, and gathering it felt better than not gathering it. Then I noticed the Mercer unit. One person could do what they did. Several people working together with a plan could do what they did. The lumber delivery, the tool cache, the systematic window reinforcement. I recognized the logic of it because it matched what I would have done if I'd had the resources and the help. They were thinking 2 steps ahead. They were the right people to know. I flew the drone close to their window on day 4. Not for any specific reason, or rather for a reason I wouldn't admit to myself until considerably later. The first time I saw his face clearly, that jawline, the way he stands with his weight shifted slightly forward, the exact posture of someone who is always thinking about the next thing. I was looking through the drone feed on my phone and my first thought was, oh, and my second thought was, that's ridiculous, that cannot be the same person. My third thought was that I was going to fly the drone past that window one more time. I told myself I was watching for strategic reasons. I was watching for strategic reasons. I was also watching for another reason that I wasn't prepared to name out loud. When I saw them come back from the Keen house and I spotted the infected near Unit 7, I moved immediately. No deliberation. I had the speaker rig already set up. I had the flight path already mapped. I told myself it was because they were valuable allies and I needed them to be safe. That was 60% true. When he called and I heard his voice, not texts, not drone notes, but his actual voice, the voice of a 13-year-old somewhere underneath it, asking, "Who are you?" with genuine curiosity and zero fear. I almost said something that I had absolutely no business saying to a stranger I'd been observing with a drone for 5 days. I said we might have something to offer each other instead because I am, when necessary, a practical person. What followed was 6 months of increasingly transparent maneuvering by everyone in that apartment except Colt, who managed to be simultaneously perceptive about everything else, and almost willfully oblivious about the one thing I was trying to let him figure out at his own pace. His mom figured it out in 3 days. On day 4, she found me in the kitchen. She'd come in ostensibly for water, which is a thing she does, and she said, "You're good for him, you know. He spends a lot of time worrying." "He has good reasons to worry," I said. "Oh, absolutely. But it's different when you have someone to worry with." She poured her water and left. I stood in the kitchen for a moment and thought, yeah, okay, I know. I had gotten very efficient at being alone. It's a skill, the same as any other skill. You develop systems, you optimize, you stop noticing the parts that are missing because noticing them doesn't help. I had my apps and my drone and my work, and I had built a life that was, in most measurable ways, entirely functional. The world ended. I lost the apps. And then Colt Mercer sat down on the curb next to me again, metaphorically speaking, and talked about sequels with his hands. And 6 months later, he came out of a kitchen with paper flowers he'd made himself over several evenings from old supply lists. And they were the worst flowers I have ever seen in my life. They are currently sitting in a cup on my nightstand. I look at them every morning. I am not, I think, a practical person at all. A note from the author. If you've been listening to this, thank you. Really. I wrote this story because I kept thinking about what it would actually feel like. Not the version with the perfectly timed action sequence and the hero who never trips. The version where it's your apartment, your parking lot, your family. The version where you do something smart and something stupid in the same afternoon and then sit in your car and shake for a little while before driving home. The version where love finds you sideways in paper flowers and drone footage and someone who doesn't ask too many questions about the nightmare. I believe most people would help each other. I believe it specifically. The Harold and Ruth Keens of the world who stocked what they could and opened the door a crack when someone shows up needing it. The upstairs neighbor with the stuffed bear and the Madagascar soundtrack and the throwing arm that belongs in a different story entirely. I'm the Sloan Vosses who have skills and the intelligence to share them, and who sit down next to you on the curb when you didn't know you needed company. The world almost ends 100 different ways on 100 different days, and mostly it doesn't, because enough people are paying attention. I hope none of us ever actually have to find out. But I wanted to write the story where, if we did, we mostly came out okay. Stay close to your people. Keep them fed. And if someone makes you paper flowers, it means they ran out of better ideas and did the work anyway. That's the whole thing, really. RV. Coming next, signal lost. While Colt and Sloan were fortifying a ground-floor apartment and sending drone deliveries over a zombie-filled parking lot, there was another story happening underground. His name is Dex Calloway. He's a 28-year-old broadcast engineer, and he spent the first 6 weeks of the outbreak 70 feet underground in a FEMA emergency relay station under the old federal building on the east side of the city. Maintaining the signal, keeping the emergency alerts alive, and talking to himself because he thought he was the only one down there. He was wrong. The second person in that relay station was not supposed to be there. She had a dog, a surprisingly comprehensive first aid kit, and a story about how she ended up underground that Dex wasn't sure he believed. He still isn't sure. He's been trying to figure it out for 8 months in between everything else that has happened. Signal lost is about what you build when you stop waiting for someone to rescue you, and about how long you can keep a signal running when everything above you is failing. About the specific kind of trust that develops between two people trapped in a small space for a very long time. And about what it means to come back up into the light. Coming soon. If you know, you know. Still here. All rights reserved. All characters fictional. No paper flowers were harmed in the making of this story.